I should have known something was wrong when the valet guy looked at me with the kind of pity usually reserved for injured raccoons and men wearing rented tuxedos. Which, to be fair, I was both emotionally and financially. The Grand Meridian Hotel looked exactly like my fiancé always dreamed it would. Giant crystal chandeliers glowed through the glass walls, expensive cars lined the entrance, and every guest inside looked like they had strong opinions about wine temperatures. Meanwhile, I was standing outside trying not to sweat through a tuxedo that cost more than my first motorcycle. Her parents loved reminding me of that. According to them, their daughter should have married someone stable. Apparently owning a successful mechanic shop didn't count because my hands occasionally had engine grease on them. Her father once shook my hand and immediately checked his watch afterward like manual labor was contagious. Still, none of that mattered whenever she looked at me. She'd spent the entire morning sending me ridiculous selfies from the bridal suite. One photo showed her in full makeup holding a champagne bottle with the caption, "Still time to escape." The next said, "Too late. I already told everyone about your weird taco addiction." That was the thing about her. She came from money, country clubs, charity galas, and people who used words like summering as verbs. But somehow she was still the funniest person I'd ever met. Which made what happened next feel even crazier. I walked into the venue lobby expecting wedding chaos. Instead, I got silence. Not normal silence either. Rich people silence. The kind where everyone pretends not to stare while absolutely staring. The wedding coordinator approached me slowly with the expression of someone carrying a dead hamster to a child. "Sir?" she whispered carefully. "I thought you already knew." "Knew what?" Her face tightened. "The wedding was cancelled yesterday." I laughed immediately because honestly, what else do you do when your brain catches fire? "Good one," I said. "Seriously though, where am I supposed to stand?" She didn't laugh. My stomach dropped so fast I felt my soul trying to leave through my shoes. "I'm sorry," she continued softly. "The payment authorization was revoked. We received direct cancellation orders from the family account holder." Around us, guests had already started whispering. I heard someone mutter, "I told you he couldn't afford this." Another voice, "This is humiliating." Then came the phones. Tiny glowing screens rising everywhere like judgmental little periscopes. One of her cousins was absolutely recording me. That's when I noticed her father near the ballroom entrance pretending not to smile. The man actually had the nerve to sip champagne while avoiding eye contact. Beside him, her mother wore the satisfied expression of a Disney villain who just poisoned a teenager. And suddenly it clicked. These psychopaths canceled their own daughter's wedding. Not because they couldn't pay. Not because something went wrong. Because they wanted me publicly embarrassed. Because if they humiliated me badly enough, maybe she'd finally leave the mechanic. For one terrifying second, I genuinely considered getting back into my truck and disappearing forever. Then the ballroom doors slammed open. She came storming across the marble floor in full wedding dress mode like an angry angel with expensive hair extensions. "What?" she yelled. "Do you mean the venue is cancelled?" The entire lobby froze. Her mother instantly switched to fake sadness. "Sweetheart, we were trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? Happiness?" Her father stepped forward carefully. "This man cannot provide the life you deserve." I finally spoke. "I think your dad disputed the credit card charges," I said quietly. Several guests gasped. One old woman whispered, "Oh, this is getting good." My fiancée stared at her parents for 3 full seconds. Then she slowly lifted her wedding heels off her feet like she was preparing for combat. And that's when I realized this day was about to become a complete disaster. Honestly, I had no idea it would end up on the local news. Most people respond to family betrayal with crying, therapy, or at minimum a dramatic cigarette in the rain. My fiancé responded by stealing an entire champagne bottle from the hotel bar and threatening to throw it at her father's Mercedes. "You can't commit a felony in a wedding dress," I whispered. "Watch me." Honestly, There was something deeply attractive about seeing a 5'4" rich girl transform into a tiny, furious raccoon. The hotel lobby had completely collapsed into chaos behind us. Guests were arguing, somebody's grandmother was openly booing my future father-in-law, and at least 3 relatives were still filming everything instead of helping. One bridesmaid had already started a poll online asking whether arson counted as self-care. Meanwhile, her mother kept trying to spin the situation like this was somehow romantic. "We simply didn't want her making a mistake," she announced dramatically to anyone listening. "A mistake?" my fiancé snapped. "Mom, you married Dad because he owned a boat. It was a very large boat." That's when my phone rang. It was my best friend. Now, every human being has at least one friend who should legally require supervision. Mine was Tony. Tony owned a taco truck, had been banned from 2 casinos, and once accidentally started a neighborhood fireworks riot because he misunderstood the phrase gender reveal. "Bro," he answered immediately, "I just saw your wedding trending online." "Fantastic. So are we fighting people or what?" I looked around at the disaster. The ruined ballroom. The smug rich relatives. The woman I loved standing barefoot in a $6,000 wedding dress ready to physically assault her bloodline. And suddenly I realized something. I didn't actually care about the ballroom anymore. I just wanted to marry her. "You still parked outside?" I asked. "Always." "You got food?" "Brother," he said emotionally, "I have carnitas." 20 minutes later, the world's most illegal wedding reception began forming in the hotel parking lot. Tony opened the taco truck windows like he was launching a military operation. Music started blasting through giant speakers held together with duct tape, and what looked suspiciously like jumper cables. My mechanic coworkers dragged over folding chairs from somewhere I absolutely did not ask about for legal reasons. Guests started wandering outside out of pure curiosity. Then they stayed. Because apparently free tacos and public family drama are humanity's greatest unifying forces. One bridesmaid climbed onto the taco truck holding tequila shots yelling, "If love is dead, then why am I still hot?" Nobody had an answer for that. My fiancée somehow ended up dancing barefoot beside the food truck while her wedding dress collected hot sauce stains like battle scars. She looked happier than she had all day. That hit me harder than the humiliation ever did. I walked over quietly while everyone screamed along to bad karaoke nearby. One of Tony's cousins was aggressively singing love ballads to a police officer who honestly seemed pretty interested. "I'm sorry," I told her. She blinked. "For what?" "For this whole disaster. You deserve some perfect luxury wedding." She stared at me for a second like I'd just said something incredibly stupid. Then she grabbed my tie and pulled me close enough that I could smell tequila and expensive perfume. "I don't care about ice sculptures," she said softly. "I care about you, idiot." Then she kissed me right there beside a taco truck while somebody in the background shouted, "Who puts jalapenos in sangria?" And somehow this disaster started feeling like the best night of my life. That's when we noticed the live stream. One of the bridesmaids had been broadcasting the entire parking lot wedding online for almost an hour. The viewer count was climbing so fast it looked fake. 30,000 people. Then 50. Then more. Tony stared at the screen in horror. "Bro," he whispered, "I think your wedding just became content." By the time the local news arrived, the parking lot looked less like a cancelled wedding and more like a small country overthrowing its government through tequila and emotional instability. Nobody even knew who called the reporters. Tony claimed he did it for marketing purposes. One bridesmaid claimed journalism was important for democracy. Personally, I suspected my future mother-in-law accidentally summoned them by screaming loud enough to trigger media attention from orbit. The news van pulled up right beside the taco truck while a drunk uncle attempted to crowd surf to karaoke music from the early 2000s. A cameraman stepped out, took one long look around at the disaster, and immediately said, "Oh, this is incredible." The reporter introduced herself while dodging a flying bouquet someone had weaponized during an argument. "We heard there was a wedding cancelled over financial issues?" Before I could answer, my fiancée appeared beside me holding 2 tacos and half a margarita. "Oh no," she said cheerfully. "My parents canceled it because they're classist lunatics." Somewhere behind us, her mother yelled. "I heard that." The reporter's eyes lit up like she just discovered treasure. Within minutes, cameras were everywhere. The live stream numbers exploded even higher once the news station connected to the story online. Random strangers started showing up from around town carrying folding tables, cheap decorations, and alcohol like this had become some kind of community emergency response event. One old lady arrived with a crock-pot and simply announced, "I hate rich people. Where do you need me?" Honestly? Iconic behavior. Meanwhile, the taco truck line stretched halfway across the parking lot. Tony had switched from cooking to full nightclub DJ mode. At one point he climbed onto the truck roof screaming, "Love is temporary. Tacos are forever." The crowd lost their minds. Even the police officers who arrived for noise complaints ended up staying for food. One cop was slow dancing with my grandmother while holding 3 churros. And somehow the weirdest part still wasn't the alien tourists. A family from one of the nearby orbital trade districts had apparently stopped because they thought the crowd was a human cultural festival. They stood near the food truck watching everything with deep scientific concern. One of them finally asked me, "Do humans normally transform social humiliation into public celebration?" Tony answered before I could. "Only the emotionally damaged ones." The alien nodded thoughtfully like he was documenting dangerous wildlife. The reporter eventually pulled me aside for a live interview while chaos erupted behind us. At that exact moment, 2 bridesmaids were racing shopping carts through the parking garage while someone played saxophone badly in the distance. "So," the reporter asked carefully, "how does it feel having your wedding cancelled?" I looked over at my fiancée laughing beside the taco truck with salsa on her wedding dress and honestly answered the truth. Way cheaper than therapy. That clip hit the internet like a missile. People started cheering around us after the reporter replayed it live. Then came the moment that completely destroyed my future in-laws. One of the hotel employees finally admitted on camera that the cancellation request came directly from my fiancée's parents. Apparently her father had demanded they embarrass me publicly enough to teach her a lesson about marrying beneath her. The crowd turned instantly. You could physically feel public opinion leaving their bodies. Even their rich friends looked horrified now. My future mother-in-law tried grabbing the microphone to defend herself, but nobody wanted to hear it anymore. Guests started booing. Somebody threw a dinner roll. One drunk cousin shouted, "Let the taco man marry his princess." Shockingly emotional sentence considering the circumstances. Her father attempted to storm away dramatically before immediately slipping on spilled margarita mix beside the dance area. The man went down so hard his loafers briefly achieved air travel. The cameraman caught everything. The entire parking lot froze for one glorious second. Then the crowd erupted. I swear even the police officers laughed. My fiancée looked at her furious parents, then at me, then at the growing crowd dancing beneath cheap parking lot lights. And smiling wider than I'd ever seen before, she grabbed the microphone and screamed, "This wedding is way better!" At some point during the night, the parking lot stopped feeling temporary. It became ours. More food trucks started arriving after the live stream exploded online. Nobody invited them. They just appeared like emotionally supportive raccoons responding to chaos. A barbecue truck parked beside Tony's Tacos. Then a dessert van showed up blasting dance music. Some guy selling suspicious homemade fireworks claimed he was here for love. Honestly, by midnight there were at least 4 minor fire hazards, and one guy teaching aliens how to play beer pong. The alien tourists never left. In fact, they became weirdly invested in our relationship. One of them spent 20 straight minutes asking me questions about human marriage rituals while eating churros with scientific concentration. "So the female selected you despite reduced financial ranking?" he asked carefully. "Correct." "And then publicly defended you against her parental unit?" "Also correct." The aliens stared at us dancing together under cheap parking lot lights while strangers cheered nearby. "Humans are emotionally violent," he finally whispered. Fair assessment. My fiancée looked completely different now than she had inside that luxury hotel earlier. Her expensive hairstyle had collapsed hours ago. Her makeup was smudged. Salsa stains covered the bottom of her wedding dress. And somehow she'd never looked more beautiful. That's when she walked over carrying one of those plastic rings from a cheap prize machine somebody had dragged over from the arcade next door. She held it up dramatically. "Well," she announced, "my parents can keep the family diamonds." The crowd quieted immediately. She slipped the plastic ring onto her finger and smiled at me. "This one actually came with happiness. I'm not gonna lie. That almost broke me." Even Tony got emotional, although that may have been because someone accidentally mixed tequila into the slushy machine. The crowd gathered around us naturally after that. Nobody organized it. People just formed a giant circle beneath the parking lot lights while music echoed through the night air. One of the police officers volunteered to officiate because apparently he got ordained online during the pandemic. For tax reasons. Good enough for me. I looked at the woman standing in front of me. The woman who had just destroyed her relationship with rich controlling parents because she loved me more than their approval, and suddenly none of the humiliation mattered anymore. "I can't promise luxury," I told her quietly. Tony immediately yelled. "He can barely promise health insurance." The crowd burst out laughing. I pointed at him. "You see what I deal with?" Even she laughed so hard she nearly cried. Then I looked back at her. "But I can promise you this," I said softly. "Your life will never be boring." For once, the entire parking lot went quiet. She squeezed my hands. "I don't want perfect," she whispered. "I want real." And somehow that hit harder than every disaster that happened that night. The crowd exploded cheering when we kissed. Fireworks suddenly launched somewhere behind the taco trucks even though absolutely nobody had approved fireworks permits. The alien tourists started recording everything like they'd discovered a new human religion. Meanwhile, her parents watched from the hotel entrance looking completely defeated. Not angry anymore. Just confused. Because for the first time in their lives, all their money had lost. The live stream eventually crossed 2 million views overnight. Clips of her father slipping on margarita mix spread across the internet at terrifying speed. Someone added dramatic opera music to it. Another person turned it into a dance remix. By morning, local radio stations were calling him the falling billionaire. Tony's taco truck became so famous he had customers lining up for blocks every day afterward. My mechanic shop got flooded with support from strangers saying things like, "Any man who survives rich in-laws deserves 5 stars." And the local news replayed our wedding story for an entire week. Their final headline said, "Cancelled luxury wedding accidentally becomes city's most chaotic love story." A reporter later asked me if I regretted losing the expensive venue. I looked over at my wife stealing tacos directly from Tony's truck while arguing with an alien tourist about karaoke songs and honestly told the truth. Thank God they cancelled the first wedding. Because the second one? The second one was actually ours.